Trainers, I'm a huge Pokemaniac, but did you know that in 2002, I almost quit Pokemon forever? Upon the release of Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire for the Game Boy Advanced, there was one major flaw with the series. You weren't able to transfer your Pokemon from Generation 1 and 2 to Generation 3. Upon learning this, it felt like Game Freak had abandoned us, causing us to leave behind the friends that we spent so much time with. However, we now know that the reason for this incompatibility was because Game Freak changed the way that Pokemon's stats were obtained. They've included things such as splitting your special into special attack and special defense. They also included the change in IVs and DVs over to effort values, and as well, they also included Pokemon natures. With the change of Pokemon stats and the change of hardware, that is the reason why the Pokemon were incompatible to be traded to Generation 3. On February 27th of 2016, Game Freak decided to right a wrong. They ended up releasing Pokemon Generation 1 and 2 to the 3DS Virtual Console, which allowed you to transfer your Pokemon through to Pokemon Bank. However, there was still an issue with this. Those of us with original hardware still couldn't transfer our Pokemon we worked so hard for through to the latest generation. In August of 2025, I was scrolling through Twitter and I came across a very interesting post. There was a user known as Dr. Dubs23, and he was posting about a device that he recently invented that bridges the gap between generations 2 and 3 using original hardware. What's even more exciting is he was looking for people to be able to beta test his product and help improve it. After reaching out to Dr. Dubs23, he provided me the ability to test just that. Ladies and gentlemen, meet the Trade Buddy. Upon receiving the Trade Buddy, I was provided version 1 with a serial number of number 2. I also managed to go through and perform my very first trades. The trades originally started on version 1.0, and I noticed a few things when I was doing the trade. Upon doing the very first few trades, I noticed that trade evolutions were not possible. I also noticed that trading held items were not a thing. And as well, I also noticed that you were not able to trade using the analog pocket. After communication back with Dr. Dubs, we actually went through and fixed the communication error. We also corrected the ability to trade held items, and we also fixed the ability for trade evolutions. This brought us up in quite a few different revision numbers, of course, with trial and error. But we also noticed another thing as well. When we traded any kind of Mew or Celebi over to Generation 3, they all became illegal, which then brought up the question of legality. During the process of transferring the Pokemon over from Generation 2 to Generation 3, legality became a huge question. There are a ton of Pokemon that were released in Generation 2 that have attacks, and as well are mythical Pokemon that weren't necessarily available in Generation 3. So upon looking at the legality aspect of these Pokemon, we decided to be able to implement a fix where it removed the attacks from the Pokemon that were not available in Generation 3, and as well, we also converted any Mew and Celebi over to an event Pokemon that was obtained in Generation 3. In this video, I will be using the Trade Buddy to transfer Pokemon from Generations 2 to Generations 3. Now, in order to record this, I won't be using this specific Game Boy Advanced. And the reason being is that it cannot be outputting audio or video to my computer. I'd have to use a webcam, which is not necessarily the greatest way to display this process. So what I'm going to be using here today is I'm going to be using a device known as the Game Boy Advance Consolizer. This is an original Game Boy Advance that has been modified with a kit that outputs audio and video through HDMI. It reads the original cartridges, which is how I'm going to display my Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance footage, and as well, once I get the actual Pokemon transferred over to my Game Boy Advance cartridge of Pokemon Emerald, I'll be using a device known as the GB01 cart reader to rip my game save from Pokemon Emerald to my PC. This is going to allow me to read the game save and check the legality in PKHEX. Once we verify that the legality is good, we're going to be then taking our Game Boy Advance Pokémon Emerald cartridge and we're going to put it into our Nintendo DS Fat. This is a Nintendo DS that was modified by Loopy to output audio and video over USB. This is how I'm going to be capturing the footage of taking the Pokémon from Gen 3 and sending them to Platinum using PalPark. From there, I'm also going to take this and transfer Pokémon over to Pokémon Generation 5, White 2, and then we're going to be then taking those Pokémon and sending them through to Pokémon Transporter to Pokémon Bank using our Nintendo 3DS. Once it's in Pokémon Bank, I'm then going to take my Nintendo Switch 2, and I'm going to transfer those Pokémon in to Pokémon Scarlet and Pokémon Violet so you guys can see it. In order to start the process of trading from Generation 2 to Generation 3, we're going to take the Trade Buddy and we're going to power it on. On the front of the device, underneath the display, there should be a small power button. We're going to go ahead and power that on for just a few moments, and the display should come up showing Trade Buddy version 1, and it should also state that it's ready to trade with Generation 2. In this instance, we're going to take the link cable that the Trade Buddy has, and we're going to connect it to our Game Boy Advance consoleizer. Please note, the consoles that I've tested with are a Game Boy Advanced, a Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance Player for the Nintendo GameCube, and I've also tested with an Analog Pocket. As you can see, I'll be using a Pokémon Gold cartridge. I would like to mention that with the Pokémon Gold cartridge that I'm using, I had started a brand new game save where I went through and tried to capture every Pokémon available in Pokémon Gold, from start to finish. I'll be bringing a full Let's Play to the channel where I'm actually going through and capturing all 251 Pokémon. And at a later date, I'll also be showcasing the Trade Buddy as I transfer all 251 Pokémon through to Pokémon Emerald and straight through to Pokémon Home. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and load into our game save here. And as you can see, we're already in the Pokémon Center. If we take a look at the Pokémon that we have Feraligatr, Magmar, Haunter, Onix, Celebi, and Mew. Now these Pokémon aren't necessarily all special, however there are some instances where these Pokémon are important to this video. Feraligatr of course is my starter Pokémon, so nothing too special there. But with Magmar, as you can see, Magmar is level 16. During the process of trying to implement the legality aspect of the Trade Buddy, we ended up noticing that Magmar is not available at level 16 in Generation 3. So we have ended up converting it in Generation 3 over to level 30. Now Haunter, of course, is a Pokemon that evolves by trade, so we're going to be showcasing the trade evolution here. Now if we take a look at Onix, this Onix is actually very special. It has a special move called Sharpen, which was an event Pokemon back in Generation 2. We've also included the Metal Code in order to show that trade evolutions with held items is possible. If we take a look at Celebi, Celebi of course is not available in Pokemon Gold or Pokemon Silver by natural means. Celebi was actually only available by Nintendo event, so I've actually gone through and obtained one of these Celebi. If we take a look at Mew, this Mew also originated from a Generation 1 Nintendo event. This is the Norway Mew. We've implemented the legality fix so that way these two Pokemon are converted over to a Generation 3 Nintendo event Pokemon. So let's go ahead here and get started. So we're going to go ahead and do things in a very specific order. Make sure that your Trade Buddy is powered on and connected to your link cable port. As long as it says that it's ready for trading with Generation 2, we're good to go. So we're going to go ahead here and talk to the lady at the very top of the Pokemon Center, and we're going to go into the trade room. Once we're in the trade room, connect up with the other player at the desk, and this should initiate the trade. So the first Pokemon that we're going to trade, we are going to trade for our Feraligatr over to the Trade Buddy. You're going to notice that the opposing trainer is named Trader, and there are 6 Rattata that are available to trade. Now, during the trade, take note of the ID numbers that are associated with the Pokemon. As you can see, my trainer ID is 28830. This will be important for verifying the Pokemon on the other end. With the first Pokemon traded, we're ready to trade our second Pokemon. Okay, so the next Pokemon that we're going to trade is going to be Magmar. Now if we take a look at Magmar, right now it's level 16. The earliest it can be caught in Pokemon Gold and Pokemon Silver is level 16. If we were to trade it without the legality fix, it would actually show up as being illegal in Generation 3. The reason being is that the earliest that it's able to be caught in Generation 3 Fire Red and Leaf Green is above the level of 30. If we take a look at the evolution of Magmar from Magby, it evolves into Magmar at level 30. So the Trade Buddy actually has a fix where it actually converts Magmar from level 16 to level 30. Upon trading this over, this should show up in PKHEX as being legal. Okay, the third Pokemon that we're going to be trading over here is going to be our trade evolution for Haunter. So upon sending it over to the Trade Buddy, we're not going to see this Pokemon evolve at this time. The only time that we're going to see Haunter evolve is when Trade Buddy sends it to Generation 3. The fourth Pokemon we're going to be sending over is going to be our Onix. And of course, as you know, this is a special event Onix where it has the move Sharpen and has the metal coat attached. Similar to Pokemon such as Haunter, we're not going to notice that the Onix is going to evolve until it goes into Generation 3 from the Trade Buddy. As we do this trade, take note of the trainer ID. The trainer ID is Betts, and the ID number was 22950. This number should remain the same once it gets over to Generation 3. Next up, we have our Celebi. Now again, Celebi is an event Celebi from Nintendo. Normally, this Pokemon is not obtained in Pokemon Gold. So take note of the trainer ID as we're sending it over to the trade buddy. You should notice that upon receiving it in Generation 3, the trainer name as well as the trainer ID number should be different to that of a Generation 3 event. As you can see, 2233 and Franco is the trainer name. And last but not least, we have our Generation 1 event Pokemon, Mew. Again, take note of the trainer ID number and the name. This name should change over to that of an event Mew from Generation 3. Now, once we have all of the Pokemon traded over to the trade buddy, we are going to go ahead and load up our Pokemon Emerald copy, where we're going to initiate the trade with Generation 3. Once we've finished, we will actually use a feature known as the flashback with the trade buddy to trade all of the Pokemon we sent it back to Generation 2. Once you've finished with the trade, you'll need to exit the trade by hitting the cancel option, and then, very important, you need to actually leave the trade room. So make sure not to turn off the console. By leaving the trade room, this tells the trade buddy to stop the trade to Gen 2, convert the Pokemon to Generation 3, and begin the process to trade to Generation 3. Once you've left the Pokemon trade room, go ahead and save your game, and we're going to hop over to Generation 3 now. As we're using a Game Boy Advanced, we can keep the trade buddy connected to the link cable port. On the screen, we should see that it's ready to trade with Generation 3. So all we did is we turned the console off and took out our Pokemon Gold cartridge. We then put our Game Boy Advance cartridge of Pokemon Emerald in place, and we're ready to load it up and start the trade. During this time, if you're using a Game Boy Color, of course you would disconnect the trade buddy and connect it over to the link cable port on your Game Boy Advance device. Look at that Torchic. It's been a while since I've actually watched the intro to Pokemon Emerald. So good. Okay, so let's go ahead here and load up our game save. As you can see, I have not actually replaced the battery in this cartridge yet, or if I have, the battery has already run dry. If we take a look at the actual team that we have here in our current party, these are fodder Pokemon. As you end up trading with the trade buddy, the Pokemon that you send it from Generation 3 actually get erased, so they're no longer going to be available to your game cartridge or any other games that you trade with. So make sure you're ready to lose these Pokemon. From there, you're going to want to go upstairs in the Pokemon Center, and you're going to want to talk to the Cable Club. From there, we're going to go to the trade, and we're going to save our game. Once you've saved, go ahead and hit the A button twice, and you'll be entered into the room to initiate the start of the trade. From there, the communication will begin, and you'll see the Pokémon on the opposing side. As we can already tell, there is a change with the Mew. In Pokemon Gold, Mew was level 5. In this instance, Mew is actually being sent to us at level 10. That's because of the conversion over to a Nintendo event Pokemon that's legal inside Generation 3. But we'll take a look at that here in a little while. I should also state that if you trade a shiny Mew over to Generation 3 using the Trade Buddy, it will be converted over to a Japanese Mew from Faraway Island, as that is the only legal shiny Mew available in Generation 3. The next Pokemon that we're going to be trading for is going to be Celebi. If we take a look at Celebi, originally in Generation 2, we sent it over at level 5. Upon the conversion over to Generation 3, it has been changed to being level 70. This is so that way it matches the only legal Generation 3 Celebi available by Nintendo Event. I should also make note that upon trading a shiny Celebi in Generation 2, in order to preserve its shininess, we've allowed it, but due to legality reasons, a shiny Celebi is not available legally in Generation 3. So if you try to send it through to Pokemon Home, it may show up as being illegal. Upon trading this next Pokemon, Onix, you will notice that Sharpen has been removed from its attack list. That's because Sharpen is not available in Generation 3 for Onix. However, you will notice that it still has its metal coat, and will evolve into Steelix upon receiving it. Please also note that the trainer ID as well as the trainer name should remain the same. At this time, I should probably mention that upon trading your Pokemon from Generation 2 to Generation 3, you will need to have the National Dex to obtain some Pokemon. This is actually a feature of the Generation 3 games, so that way you are forced to use the Pokemon that were available pre-National Dex. In this case, my game save already has the National Dex available to us, so that's why we're receiving Steelix and Onix here at this time. Normally, this would not be available in Generation 3 Pokemon Emerald. As we have now shown that trade evolutions with held items is now possible, we will also be trading Haunter over to show that standard trade evolutions are possible as well. Now in this instance, if I were to attach an Everstone to Haunter, it will not evolve over into Gengar upon receiving it into Generation 3. Fortunately for me, I did not do that to myself, like certain NPCs would to you in-game. Now upon trading over to Generation 3, at the level that Haunter is currently at, once it evolves over into Gengar, it'll actually learn a new move. In this instance, it wants to learn the move Shadow Punch. For this next trade, if we take a look at Magmar, you're going to notice that Magmar is no longer level 16. It has been converted over to level 30. This is due to the wild encounter that's available in Generation 3 being above level 30, and as well, Magby can only evolve into Magmar at level 30 itself. Any other level prior to level 30 makes Magmar illegal in PKHEX. And the final Pokemon that we're going to be sending over to Generation 3 will be our Feraligatr. Upon my travels with Feraligatr, I taught it quite a few different moves. However, one move stands out above all the rest: Ice Punch, a very common TM that we would teach Feraligatr in that generation. Upon sending it over to Generation 3, it still is legal with the move Ice Punch. Now that the trades are complete, you're going to want to go through to the very bottom of the screen and you're going to want to click Cancel. You may have to do this a few times in order to leave the room. Once you've actually exited out of the trade, you and your buddy will leave the room, terminating the connection. Upon leaving the room, the trade buddy will reset and go back to being able to be traded with Generation 2. This will allow you to initiate the flashback trade to Generation 2 to receive your good friends back to their favorite game. If we take a look at the Pokemon here, you can see that the Pokemon are in the party and they're all ready to go. So if we take a look at Mew, we're going to see that Mew has been changed over to being a Mystery Mew with the ID number of 6930. You should also make note that the nature is Hasty. Now the natures, of course, are randomized based on PID and trainer ID numbers from the previous generation. So if you were to send that Mew over multiple times, it may eventually have a different nature than what it had prior. If we take a look at Celebi, this is the 10th anniversary Celebi, the only event Pokemon that was available for Celebi itself in Generation 3. When we take a look at the next 4 Pokemon, you'll notice that the OT and the ID numbers remain the same. However, you're going to see that it was probably met at level 5 from Altering Cave. The reason for this is it shows up as being a traded Pokemon that was most likely bred from an egg and was hatched in Altering Cave. In order to verify the legality of these Pokemon, I ended up taking a Pokemon egg to Altering Cave, hatched it, and then I traded it over to another game. This allowed me to view that it was probably met at level 5 and was obtained in the Altering Cave when it hatched. This is to verify that the legality was correct. Initially, my first instinct was that it was wrong, but after testing it, it is actually accurate. Now that we have all of our Pokemon available in Generation 3, traded through the Trade Buddy from Generation 2, we're going to go back and load our Generation 2 game, and we're going to use the flashback to trade the Pokemon back to Generation 2. Upon doing this, there's a few surprises waiting for us as well. Once you finish trading with the Trade Buddy, you will notice that the Trade Buddy resets and states that it's ready to trade with Generation 2. If we take a look at Pokemon Gold that we tested with the trading here, we have currently 6 Rattata that were provided to us by Trader. The reason why we were receiving Rattata is because it's a very early on Pokemon that does not affect the actual Pokédex of Generation 2. When ready to trade, talk to the lady at the top of the Pokemon Center while the Trade Buddy is connected and turned on. From here, we're going to save our game, and we should be able to enter the room. From here, we should be able to communicate with the trade buddy, and we should see all the Pokemon that we previously traded to it in the opposing trainer's party list. At this time, I'm going to go through and trade all of the Pokemon back from the Trade Buddy to our Pokemon Gold cartridge. During this process, all of the Pokemon that you traded over to the Trade Buddy are not altered in any way, shape, or form. They stay in their original state. However, you should take note that when you trade a Pokemon over from Trade Buddy back to Pokemon Gold, if it evolves by a trade, or if it has a held item causing it to evolve during a trade, this will actually initiate during this process of the flashback. So if you only have one cartridge and one game, and you need to have trade evolutions in Generation 2, the Trade Buddy can definitely assist you with this process. During the process of trading with the Trade Buddy over the past 2 months, I have run into quite a few different complications. However, all of these complications were very quickly fixed by Dr. Dubs within approximately a 24 to 48 hour time frame. We've ended up going from version 1.0 all the way up to version 1.16. That's quite a lot of revisions for a beta test for sure. The initial trade over from the Trade Buddy from a Game Boy Advance console, and with the actual testing within Analog Pocket, I ran into a lot of different timing issues and had quite a few different communication errors. I would like to give a big shout out to Dr. Dubs for assisting in correcting these problems in a timely manner. I have to say the communication level with this developer is phenomenal. He's absolutely fantastic to work with, and I definitely look forward into doing more beta testing with him in the future. With version 1, there are a few complications, of course. The device itself has a built-in battery which charges over USB-C. Due to the fact that it has constant power, in order to be able to properly turn off the device and turn it back on, I actually have to open up the actual device, and I have to reset very specific pins by shorting them out. As I have a 20-year experience working in the IT field, fixing multiple devices, this is very easy for me to short these pins out. However, for a standard user, it can be quite complicated and a bit of a frustration. Now, I do want to say that upon troubleshooting and beta testing this device, Dr. Dubs had decided to remove the initial power source within the device and allow it to solely charge off of the link cable port on your Game Boy Color or your Game Boy Advance console. This is going to allow the device to power off properly and reset the timers, so that way there's no communication errors upon trading with Generation 2 or Generation 3 using official or unofficial hardware. At this time, we are receiving our Haunter back to our Game Boy Color game of Pokemon Gold, and later in this trade, we should also be able to see this Pokemon evolve as well. At this time, I am going to be working on trying to get all of the Rattata back over to the Trade Buddy. During my initial beta testing, I found this very useful to determine that the Trade Buddy had been reset back to the original factory state. So that way, if I was to run into any complications by trading a Pokemon, I know that the Pokemon that came from the Trade Buddy are 100% legal. As you can see here, our Haunter is now currently evolving into Gengar, and now that has now updated our Gen 2 Pokédex on our Game Boy Color cartridge. Okay, next up, we're going to get our Onix back to our Game Boy Color. And upon trading back to our Pokemon Gold game, this Pokemon should evolve into a Steelix. Okay, here we go. Onix is now currently evolving into our Steelix. And this will also update our Pokédex in Generation 2. Next up, we are going to be sending Celebi back to Gen 2. And last but not least, we're going to be receiving Mew back as well. Once we receive Mew back, we're able to turn off the Trade Buddy when we leave the trade room, and that will complete our process with the Trade Buddy itself. In order to determine that these Pokemon are all ready and legal, we're going to be verifying them in PKHEX from Generation 3. From there, we will then continue on with the process of sending them to Pokemon Home. Okay, so we now have two instances of our Auto Legality PKHEX mod open. So we're going to load on the top screen the Pokemon Emerald game save from when Trade Buddy finished trading with it, and on the bottom one we're going to open up our Pokemon Gold save from prior. So the first Pokemon we're going to look at here is going to be Feraligatr. You're going to notice that the experience points, the level, are all the same as previous. However, the nature is quirky, and it gains the ability Torrent. It was obtained in Altering Cave in Emerald. The stats are now converted over to effort values, as you can see, and IVs. The moves are going to be the same, and the OT will remain the same as well. If we take a look at the little green checkbox, that means that the Pokemon is valid. In the next one, we're looking at Mew from Generation 1, which was converted from being a Norway event over to the Mystery Mew with the difference in the trainer IDs. Mew then is level 10 with the nature of Hasty and the ability of Synchronize, and this event came from Pokemon Ruby. From there, you're going to notice that the effort values have been reset, and as well the IVs are also randomized based on the PID and the trainer IDs. When we take a look at the Pokemon Celebi, in Generation 2, for some reason it shows up as being illegal. However, with Generation 3, it was converted over to the 10th anniversary Celebi. You can see that this Pokemon was obtained for Pokemon Ruby, and it was also transferred over to being the 10th anniversary Celebi with the TID of 10. When you take a look at Steelix, you're going to notice that the trainer ID information still remains the same. However, when you take a look at the information under Met, it shows Altering Cave. It was available in a Pokeball, and the Met level is now 0. That means that the Pokemon was bred and hatched from an egg, and it was ended up being traded. From there, the information should still be the same with the moves, except for the fact that Sharpen had been removed, and the trainer ID is still the same. If we take a look at Gengar now versus the Haunter in the gold save, you're going to notice that the levels are a little bit different. That's because when the game save was exported from my Pokemon Gold cartridge, I did not level up my Haunter to level 25. In this instance, we should see the same information between the two different Pokemon, such as the trainer name, the ID number, and of course, any other information such as the gender. When we take a look at the Magmar, you're going to notice that the Magmar is legal at level 30, and it was found in Altering Cave in Pokemon Emerald. The IVs are randomized just like before, and the moves haven't really changed much. ID number and the trainer ID are still the same. Now at this time, we're going to take the Pokemon from Pokemon Emerald, and we're going to send them through to Pal Park in Pokemon Heart Gold. The reason we're not using Platinum, as earlier stated, is I ran into a complication with my Nintendo DS Fat. As the plastics had broke, I ended up having to repair the console, causing me to remove the battery, which reset the clock for Pokemon Platinum, and it didn't recognize the console once the battery was removed, causing a 24-hour lockout. With Pokemon Heart Gold, there is no 24-hour lockout to use Pal Park, so that's why we're using Heart Gold in this case. From here, what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down to where it shows Migrate from Pokemon Emerald. In order to do this, with the actual cartridge in the bottom slot, you're going to want to make sure the Pokemon you're going to want to trade is in the PC in box number 1. Once the Pokemon are migrated, they cannot be migrated back to Pokemon Emerald. So make sure that the trade that you're going to perform is what you want to do, as there's no going back. From here, we've selected all 6 of our Pokemon. We're going to click yes, and yes to confirm. And this is actually going to take the Pokemon from Emerald to Pokemon Heart Gold, and these Pokemon will be available in Pal Park in Fuchsia City of Kanto. Once the Pokemon have been migrated, you're going to want to go in and load up your game save. As you can see, I'm currently in Fuchsia City, and I'm outside of the Pal Park. What we're going to do is we're going to enter into the building, and we're going to talk to the gentleman at the counter. He says, "Welcome to Pal Park. This is where top-notch trainers who aren't satisfied with the Safari Zone come to show their Pokemon catching skills." "Oh, are you maybe? Ah, you are Elena. My dad told me about you. Word is, you're a hotshot trainer. We'd be honored if you would participate in our catching shows." "Yes, you agreed to participate. Let's not waste any time. Let me explain how Pal Park works. What should I explain?" Of course, at this point, there's no explanation required. I've been using Pal Park for years. I've been transferring Pokemon from the earlier generations through to Pokemon Home for quite some time, so I'm quite familiar with this process. What they end up doing is they provide you with 6 park balls. From there, you're set out into the area, and you have to find the Pokemon that you actually transferred over. In this case, majority of our Pokemon are going to be obtained in the mountain area. As well, there's going to be a few Pokemon that are going to be available off to the grass to the left. So we're going to go through here and start searching through the Pal Park area. Okay, our first Pokemon is now found, and it appears to be our Celebi. Now as you can see, Celebi is still level 70 when it transfers over. this Pokemon is actually untouched from Generation 3. As long as you throw your Park Ball, it should be 100% capture for this Pokemon. As long as you find the Pokemon in the park, you should be able to capture them, and to my knowledge, there is no time limit on this minigame. Okay, the second Pokemon we are going to find is going to be our Gengar. Now, in some instances of using Palpark, the rarer the Pokemon, the harder it can be to find it. So just continue searching the grass until you locate that Pokemon. In this case, our third Pokemon will be Mew. Now, this location where we're currently at is currently known as the mountain area. The last 3 remaining Pokemon that we have should be found in this location. As you can see, we found our level 30 Magmar. Okay, we just found our Feraligatr. And of course this Pokemon, I'm surprised that this Pokemon is actually found in the mountainous area versus over in the oceanic area. But I'm not going to complain. The faster we find the Pokemon, the better. As you can probably tell at this point in the video, it's a very lengthy process. And the final Pokemon, our Steelix. Okay, there we go. All 6 of our Pokemon have now been captured, and as we finish up with Palpark, they will be automatically deposited to our PC. Congratulations, that's all 6 Pokemon caught. Alright, let's see the important score. They have a little bit of a scoring system that you can kind of mix with some friends and kind of compete against each other. I don't really have a whole lot of people that I do that with locally, so that's not really a thing for me. But we did manage to get ourselves a Lumberry, so that's pretty cool. So let's go ahead and deposit all the Pokemon to our PC. And that should complete the Palpark experience. Now, if you have more Pokemon to trade over through the Trade Buddy over to a different generation, the Palpark experience is not limited to 24 hours in Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver. So this is easily the best process in order to receive your Pokemon and to send them through to home if you're doing mass amounts. Now, if we take a look at the Pokemon here, all the Pokemon that we have should look exactly identical to that of Generation 3. So as we can see here, this Pokemon has arrived from Hoenn at level 58, and it should have the same moves as what it had prior. The OT and the ID number remain the same. As for the Mew, it's still the Mystery Mew with the same ID that was converted from the Trade Buddy for Generation 3, and we have the same thing here for Celebi. Steelix, of course, is going to be the same. It has the same OT as Mets and the same ID number, also coming from Hoenn. We have our awesome Gengar here. And we should also have our level 30 Magmar. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take these Pokemon and send them over to the Poke Transfer Lab in Pokemon White 2. In order to do this, I'll need to have 2 Nintendo DS consoles. Luckily for me, I have 2 Nintendo DS Fat consoles, which were modified by Loopy himself. These devices have a capture card installed onto them that output the video to my PC. Unfortunately, back in the day, they weren't able to do the audio portion, but with a 3.5mm audio cable and a USB sound card, I can use the line in to my laptop in order to capture the audio. To transfer the Pokemon from Pokemon Heart Gold to Pokemon White 2, I will have to have a completed game save of Pokemon White 2 to be able to access the Pokemon Transfer Lab. In order to transfer the Pokemon between one game and the other, you need to have the 2 consoles available. One console has to have Pokemon White 2 or Black 2 and the Poke Transfer Lab. This will initiate a game which will send the information over through the DS Download and Play to the secondary console, causing your Pokemon to be sent over to the other game by completing a little mini-game. I have to admit though, the mini-game is a little bit frustrating, so please bear with me as I actually go through this process. So with Pokemon White 2 here, we're going to go ahead and load up our game save. And if you take a look at the information as to where I'm at, I'm already currently at the Poke Transfer Lab. Once we're inside, we're going to want to talk to the gentleman on the top floor. Okay, as we have our secondary console here, we're going to click yes. And remember, once we transfer the Pokemon over to Pokemon White 2, we won't be able to send them back over to Pokemon Heart Gold. Okay, so we're going to end up saving our game. And we're going to initiate the initial DS Download and Play now. This is going to turn on the Nintendo DS wireless services in order to communicate with the secondary console. So as you can see, we're going to be using the Poke Transfer ID of 22441. On the secondary console, you're going to go down to where it shows DS Download and Play. Once you click into it, it should be searching the area for any DS Download and Play software titles that are being broadcast. You're going to click into the Poke Transfer ID that we have on the other console, and it's going to start downloading the game information. Okay, on the secondary console, you're going to see that it's going to be mimicking the first console, as it's sending and it's receiving. On the secondary console, you're going to be displayed with box number 1. From there, you're going to want to move all 6 of the Pokemon that you wish to transfer over to the party. As you can see here, it's activating the Poke Transfer. In the minigame, you're going to be provided with a crossbow, and the idea is you're going to use the secondary display on your DS with a stylus to shoot the Pokeball towards the Pokemon. As you can see, it can be quite difficult to match the Pokeball with the Pokemon as it jumps around between the patches of grass. It can be quite quick and quite frustrating, as a matter of fact. This is not my most favorite minigame, but as you catch a Pokemon with the crossbow Pokeball, you'll notice that the Pokeball shows up over the Pokemon on the bottom part of the screen. As the Pokemon are hiding behind the patches of grass, you'll have to wait for the Pokemon to jump out from behind it, or you'll have to wait for this little cloud that floats around. When the cloud floats around, if you actually capture it with a Pokeball, the Pokemon will fall asleep behind the patch of grass, causing them to be easier to catch. So it's pretty much just trial and error. If in the event that your timer runs out and you have not captured all of the Pokemon that you did not capture do not get transferred, you can actually start the process again for the actual minigame. As you can see here, there's a little cloud that appears onto the screen, and the Pokemon are falling asleep, so this should make it easier to obtain these Pokemon. You just have to remember what patch of grass the Pokemon are hiding behind. Now, if we take a look at Mew here, he is jumping around so fast, it's very hard to catch up with him. As the mythicals are a little bit more complicated to obtain, the minigame itself is quite doable. You just have to become really good with your hand-eye coordination. As you can see here, we've obtained our last Pokemon, and that is going to end the minigame process. From there, the actual console that we've played the minigame on is going to communicate with DS number 1, and it's going to work on sending those Pokemon over to your PC in your Gen 5 game. At this time, it's recommended that you do not turn off your console, or you may lose some data. And once the Pokemon have been successfully transferred over, you're able to turn off your secondary console. In Pokemon White 2, now that the minigame has ended, the NPC at the counter is going to ask you if you want to have all the Pokemon put into your PC. We can actually now go over to our PC and check all of the Pokemon that we transferred over from the minigame from Pokemon Heart Gold. These Pokemon should have the same information of trainer ID and trainer name, as well as the same stats and natures. So if we take a look at our Pokemon box here, we should see all 6 Pokemon. In this instance, we see here Feraligatr. Feraligatr has the same trainer ID number and trainer name, it has the same nature, and it says that it came from Hoenn. The stats and the attacks will all remain the same. For Mew, same scenario. It is a mystery Mew with the same trainer ID. It is level 10, as that was what it was converted to in the Trade Buddy. And the same thing with Celebi. Celebi is also the 10th anniversary Celebi event, and it has the same stats and the same attacks. We have Metz, which is our Steelix, and it does not have the attack of Sharpen, of course, as that was removed in the Trade Buddy. Gengar, still holding the Shadow Punch, has the trainer ID and OT of me. It's actually pretty wild that these Pokemon are actually from our Pokemon Gold cartridge. Back in 2002, all the way up to Pokemon White 2, I wouldn't have even thought of having these Pokemon transfer, as it wasn't a possibility at the time. So now that we have these Pokemon transferred into White 2, we're going to send them through Pokemon Transporter to Pokemon Bank on the Nintendo 3DS. With my Nintendo 3DS XL console that was modified by Katsukitty with my 3DS capture card, I'm going to put my Pokemon White 2 cartridge into the card slot. From there, I want to make sure that my 3DS is connected online, and I'm going to open up the Pokemon Transporter application. Once Pokemon Transporter is open, we're going to want to select the game cartridge that corresponds with the game save we're transferring Pokemon from. In this instance, you can see here we're going to select Pokemon White 2. It is then going to connect up to the Nintendo Online Network using your account, and once it's signed in, we should be able to transfer Pokemon through to Pokemon Bank. If you have a Nintendo 3DS or a Nintendo 2DS that does not have Pokemon Transporter or Pokemon Bank, unfortunately there's no way for you to obtain these apps at this time, but if you have custom firmware, you're capable of finding the apps online and then installing them through the app FBI. As we're connected to the Pokemon Bank server, they want to let us know that any Pokemon that we transfer over cannot be transferred back, and any held items are going to go back to the game's item bag. From here, it's going to use the first box, and we're going to select all 6 of these Pokemon to transfer over to our Pokemon Bank. As the Pokemon have been moved successfully, we should be able to open Pokemon Bank now, and see the Pokemon that we transported to that location. Returning to the home screen, we're going to close the software, and we're going to open up Pokemon Bank. Again, with Pokemon Bank, it's currently not possible to obtain this app by normal means, so if you do have custom firmware, you can still receive and install this software. Once we're in Pokemon Bank, you will notice that the 6 Pokemon that we transferred through this process will not have the Game Boy mark. That's because these Pokemon did not come from the Virtual Console games on the Nintendo 3DS. As the Pokemon originated from Generation 3 in this case, the Pokemon do not have any mark from Generation 3, Generation 4, or Generation 5. In order to check Pokemon Bank, I'm going to be clicking into one of my game copies that I have here, which is Pokemon Ultra Moon. Now that we're in Pokemon Bank, if we go onto the top screen and move to the left, we should then see our transporter box. And here we have all of the Pokemon that were transferred through Pokemon Gold to the Trade Buddy, to Pokemon Emerald, through Pal Park to Heart Gold and Soul Silver, through to the Transfer Lab in White 2, and then through Pokemon Transporter. If we take a look at the Pokemon that we transfer, they should still be exactly identical as they were with Generation 3. Once we have the Pokemon in Pokemon Bank, we're then going to send the Pokemon over to Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, and we're going to take a look at their summary screens. As we return to the Pokemon Bank home screen, we can actually click into using the bank, and then we're going to go and select our Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon game once again. This is going to connect the game save up with Pokemon Bank, so we can transfer the Pokemon through to the game. So in box 1 of Pokemon Bank, we're going to go through and select all 6 of these Pokemon, and move them down to the bottom screen, where we're going to go to box number 32 to deposit them. From there, we're going to save, and that will modify our game save with the additional Pokemon from Pokemon Bank. Once it's saved, we can exit the app and load up our Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. Okay, so we're going to go into our game save here. And this is the same game save I used back in the day for competitive play. So you can still see my t-shirt mod in the game. If we go to the PC, we're going to go to box number 32. And here we have all 6 of the Pokemon that we transferred over through Bank. If we take a look at Feraligatr, you're going to notice that the OT and the ID number are still the same, has the same nature, the same stats, the same level, and the same moves. However, it's going to say that it traveled across space and time to join you from Hoenn. We take a look at Mew, same thing. Information is exactly the same. It still remains that mystery event Mew from Generation 3. If we take a look at Celebi, this is still remaining as the 10th anniversary Celebi, with the trainer ID of 10, and same moves, same nature, as well as the same stats. We have the Mets Steelix, we have Gengar, which originated from my Pokemon Gold playthrough, and of course we're also going to have our Magmar, which was converted over to level 30 from Gen 3 in the Trade Buddy. Now that we verified all of our Pokemon are legal by transferring them over through Pokemon Transporter, through to Pokemon Bank, and into Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, we're now going to put these Pokemon back into Pokemon Bank. From there, what we will do is we're going to use our Katsukity console here to transfer the Pokemon from Pokemon Bank to Pokemon Home on our Nintendo Switch 2. With the Pokemon redeposited back in Pokemon Bank, on the Nintendo Switch 2, we're going to open up Pokemon Home. Both of these apps will reconnect back up to the Nintendo service in order for us to be able to begin the transfer. In Pokemon Home on the Switch 2, we're going to go down to the feature called Move. This is going to take us to a screen where we can start the process of transferring Pokemon from Pokemon Bank. On the Nintendo 3DS, we're going to go down to where it says Move Pokemon to Pokemon Home. From there, it'll go back to continue to communicate with the bank server, and you'll need to scroll down to where it shows Begin. From here, you're going to want to select the Pokemon Bank boxes of Pokemon you wish to transfer through to Pokemon Home. Once you've done this, on the Nintendo Switch 2, you're going to want to click onto the Begin Move. We're then going to be provided with a key for moving your Pokemon through the systems. On the Nintendo 3DS, you will want to go through and enter in this key. You only have 3 minutes to enter it in. Once you've entered the key, and you've finalized it, it will begin the process of sending the Pokemon over to Pokemon Home. On the Nintendo Switch 2, you will notice that it will kick you out of Pokemon Home and tell you to wait for the transfer process to finish. With the Nintendo 3DS, the process is done. You can actually power off this device at this time. After the allotted time, I'm going to load back up into Pokemon Home. From here, once I log in, it should tell me a message from Pokemon Bank that the move preparations have been completed. From there, it'll also inform me of that I can move Pokemon one at a time and organize my boxes, or I can just transfer that entire box all at once. In this case, I always choose to move all boxes as they are. So once that saves, we'll be able to load into the Pokemon Home app once again, and we'll be able to take a look at the Pokemon that we just recently migrated over from the 3DS console. From here, we're going to click into Pokemon, and under my user account, I'm actually going to go under to Pokemon Home. In this instance, I have 2 Pokemon Home accounts, and I have 2 profiles on my Switch, so I needed to make sure I was on the right one. As you can see, we have all 6 Pokemon transferred over into Pokemon Home. We do have Feraligatr, which shows us that it came from the Hoenn region and on the dates of 9/24/2025. This Pokemon should have the same trainer ID and trainer name, and as you can see, the Pokemon has been unmodified from the transfer over. We do have our Mew here as well. Same mystery, same ID number, came from the Hoenn region on today's date. And as you can see, we can also transfer it over through to Sword and Shield, BDSP, or over to Scarlet and Violet. Now in this situation here with Celebi, there are only 4 games that this Pokemon can go to, so unfortunately I won't be able to show you this Pokemon going into Scarlet and Violet, as it's not actually available or a part of the Pokédex. And the same thing goes for Steelix. Unfortunately, there's no way for me to display this at this time. We have our Gengar here. As you can see, it still remains to have the Shadow Punch attack. Nothing really too fancy about this Pokemon, but it shows that the Pokemon transferred over from Gen 2 to 3 still retains its information, even going all the way through to Pokemon Home. And our last Pokemon we will be showing here is going to be Magmar, still at level 30. As these Pokemon are now over into Pokemon Home, I'm going to now be able to transfer these Pokemon over into Pokemon Scarlet. However, of course, I'm going to have to leave Celebi and Steelix behind. But I'm going to show you guys that these Pokemon do move over to the most recent game save. Back to the home screen of Pokemon Home, we're able to select the user profile that we wish to connect to our Pokemon Home service. In this case, I'm switching over to my game save that I use for competitive play. With Pokemon Scarlet now connected, you're going to see that all of my boxes in the game are currently loaded. In this situation here, I just have to find a free spot to be able to transfer those 4 Pokemon to. The Pokemon that we're going to be transferring, of course, are Magmar, Gengar, Mew, and Feraligatr. Upon moving these Pokemon over into Pokemon Scarlet, you're going to notice that there's a little TM item that shows up on the Pokemon. This is indicating that I can actually set the attacks and the moves for these Pokemon upon transferring them over to the Scarlet PC. As you can see, the Feraligatr did change its moves slightly, so I can actually go back in and set these attacks back to the Pokemon. When it comes to Mew, unfortunately, with it being only level 10, it hasn't the experience or the knowledge of any other moves. With Gengar, we're selecting it back to the Shadow Ball, the Hypnosis, the Mean Look, and then of course we're also selecting it back to Shadow Punch. And when we look at Magmar, Magmar originally didn't have a whole lot of moves to it to begin with, so I kind of decided to keep it the way that it was. Now that the Pokemon are currently into the PC in Pokemon Scarlet, we're going to hit the plus to save, and that should save the information to our game save on the console. From there, we can now back out of Pokemon Home And we should be able to load up Pokémon Scarlet. These Pokémon should be in box number 18 of our PC. As we go over to Pokémon Scarlet, we should be able to open up our Pokémon boxes, check box number 18, and the 4 Pokémon that we transferred should already be moved over. If you take a look at the box that we're currently opening here now, you're going to see a team that was registered for a battle box. Those 6 Pokémon were originally transferred over through the Trade Buddy through to Pokémon Home, and I even EV-trained them, minted them, bottle capped them, and I used them for the Grand Challenge 2026 official competition. All Pokémon were 100% legal and ready to compete. I'll have a full series on this later on onto the channel, so be sure to stay tuned. We're going to take all of these 4 Pokémon and we're going to move them over into our party. And if you take a look here, we're going to be able to have a quick little Paldean picnic with these Pokémon. As these Pokémon were traded from Pokémon Gold to Pokémon Emerald by the use of Dr. Dub's Trade Buddy, they have been able to move all the way through the generations, all the way up through Pokémon Home into Pokémon Scarlet and Violet. The big thing is that as these Pokémon have moved through the generations and through Pokémon Bank to Home, they now have a Pokémon Home Tracker, which is actually a piece of encryption, which uniquely identifies each individual Pokémon that goes through it. These Pokémon are now officially legal and can be used in any games that come in the future. So, huge shout out goes out to Dr. Dubs 23 for inventing the Trade Buddy version 1. I am so excited and very happy that someone has finally bridged the gap between Generations 2 and Generations 3. At this time, I would also like to thank Dr. Dubs 23 for allowing me to beta test version 1 of the Trade Buddy and bring it from version 1.0 all the way up to version 1.16. And I'm also looking forward to doing a full beta test on version 2 of the Trade Buddy system. If you are interested in the Trade Buddy, it is something that is going to be available to the public once all beta testing is done. I will be sure to post as many links as possible so you guys know when that becomes available. But as for right now, we're still in the beta testing phase of these 2 devices. So with that being said, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video there today. It has been a very lengthy video, but the process for transferring from Generations 3 up to Pokemon Scarlet and Violet do take some time. So I'm really glad that I was able to show you that. As I stated earlier in the video, I will have a full Let's Play of Pokemon Gold coming to the channel as we go through the process of capturing all legit and legal Pokemon in Gen 2. And as well, I'll also be having a full Grand Challenge 2026 tournament recorded and uploaded here shortly. I'm working on those videos now. They'll be uploaded in 3 individual segments, Day 1, Day 2, and Day 3 matches. There are about 15 matches per day. And I'll also be showing the full process of transferring and training those Pokemon from the Trade Buddy console in Scarlet and Violet. If you enjoyed the video there today, go ahead and give it a big old thumbs up. Post your comments in the comment section below. I would love to hear from you what you think about the Trade Buddy, and I hope you subscribe to the channel to see more Pokemon content. Take care, guys, have a good one, and peace out.